It started as just another late night. My wife Emily had gone to bed hours ago, and I finally decided to join her. I slipped under the covers beside her, her warmth a comfort against the night's chill. My eyes felt heavy, and the steady rhythm of her breathing lulled me towards sleep. I don't remember drifting off, but when I woke, or thought I woke, I knew something was wrong. The air was thick, unmoving. My body felt heavy, leaden, as if I were sinking into the mattress. I could only move my eyes barely, just enough to see the bedroom door standing slightly ajar, the hallway beyond swallowed in shadow. Then I noticed them. At the foot of the bed, standing in the dimness, were 4 figures, motionless and silent. They were too tall, too thin, their proportions just slightly off, like a distorted reflection in warped glass. Their heads were tilted at unnatural angles, as if listening, watching. The dim glow of the alarm clock barely touched them, their outlines shifting, flickering, resisting form like something glimpsed through deep water. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to move, to nudge Emily, but my limbs refused to obey. The figures did not shift, did not acknowledge me at first, but then, as if sharing a single thought, they leaned forward in unison, their necks stretched, elongated, the motion smooth, almost fluid, a slow, deliberate invasion of my space. One of them twitched, a sudden, sharp jerk, like a marionette pulled by invisible strings. Its head snapped upright, facing me directly now. I couldn't see its eyes if it had any, but I felt its gaze burrow into me, cold and deep. And then, as if responding to some silent signal, they began to shudder. Their bodies trembled, vibrating in place, their outlines flickering violently like a scrambled image on an old TV screen. A low, wet clicking sound filled the room, coming not from their mouths if they even had mouths, but from inside them. A deep, layered sound, overlapping, disharmonious, as if each of them was filled with dozens of smaller voices, all trying to speak but never quite forming words. And then, without warning, one of them dropped, not fell, dropped, collapsing into itself like a puppet with its strings severed, a limp, boneless heap on the floor. My stomach clenched as I tried to scream, to shake Emily awake, but my throat was a locked door. A moment later, the second figure followed, another silent, jarring collapse. Then the third, the last one remained, head still tilted, body still twitching. And then, ever so slowly, it began to crawl onto the bed. Its fingers pressed into the mattress. The weight of it sank the bed ever so slightly as it dragged itself closer. Its face, or what I thought was its face, was a shifting blur, features writhing beneath skin that seemed too thin, too fragile. Its breath was wet, labored, inches from my own. Then it spoke. Not words, not anything human, but a sound that burrowed into my skull, a deep, knowing resonance that filled my head with images I didn't understand and never wanted to. A hand, clammy, skeletal, grazed my cheek, and then silence. The weight lifted. The air was still again. My body lurched forward as I gasped, shuddering, finally able to move. My fingers found Emily's arm, gripping tight. She stirred, groggy. "What's wrong?" I turned back to the foot of the bed. The figures were gone. The door was still ajar and the hardwood floor untouched. The days passed, but the feeling never left me. I stopped turning off the lights at night. I stopped closing the bedroom door. I started seeing movements and reflections, flickers in the corners of my vision. Sometimes I wake up gasping, my body frozen just like that night, my ears ringing with the distant echo of wet clicking. Emily says I've changed, that I look tired, that I flinch at shadows that aren't there. I tell her I'm fine, that it was just a bad dream. I don't tell her that some nights I wake up to find the mattress shifting ever so slightly. I've always been a light sleeper. The smallest sound or flicker of light can pull me out of even the deepest slumber. So when I started experiencing sleep paralysis, it felt like a cruel joke. I knew I was awake, but my body refused to cooperate. Over time, I'd learned to recognize the signs: the tingling sensation, the weight on my chest, the sense of dread that came from knowing I was powerless. One night, I woke up to that familiar sensation. My bedroom door was open, which was odd because I always closed it before going to bed. Through the doorway, I could see the dimly lit hallway. At first, it seemed empty, but then I noticed him. A tall man stood at the far end, his figure silhouetted by the faint glow of the nightlight plugged into the wall. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at me. I couldn't make out his face, but I could feel his gaze. My chest tightened, and I fought the rising panic. I told myself it wasn't real, that it was just another hallucination. But then he took a step forward. The sound of his footfall echoed in the hallway, a deliberate, heavy thud. Another step, and then another. My eyes darted around the room, searching for something, anything, that could help me. But all I could do was watch as he came closer. His outline grew sharper, and I could see the sharp angles of his shoulders, the way his arms hung unnaturally long at his sides. When he reached the doorway, he stopped. For a moment, he didn't move, and I dared to hope he might turn around. But instead, he leaned in, his head tilted, and I could feel his breath, warm and shallow against my face. His hand reached out, fingers impossibly long, and hovered just above my chest. I wanted to scream, to thrash, to do anything, but I couldn't. Tears streamed down my face, and all I could do was silently beg for it to end. Finally, the man straightened up and stepped back into the hallway. He turned, his movements slow and deliberate, and disappeared into the shadows. The paralysis lifted moments later, and I bolted out of bed, flipping on every light in the house. The hallway was empty, no footprints, no sign that anyone had been there. But I'll never forget the sound of those footsteps, echoing in the dark. This happened a few months ago, but it still lingers in my mind like a shadow that refuses to fade. I never believed in ghosts. I always chalked up creepy stories to overactive imaginations or exaggerated memories. That was before I started experiencing sleep paralysis. The episodes weren't frequent, but they were enough to leave me on edge. Each time I'd wake up, unable to move, my room bathed in shadows that seemed to flicker and dance at the edge of my vision. One night, I fell asleep on the couch watching TV in my living room. The dim glow of the screen was comforting, a buffer against the oppressive darkness. I remember waking up to the familiar feeling of being trapped in my own body. The TV was still on, but the sound was distorted, like a warped record playing underwater. My eyes darted around the room, landing on the freestanding mirror near the corner. At first, it was just my reflection staring back at me. But then, it moved. Not a lot, just a slight tilt of the head, enough to send a wave of cold terror through my body. My reflection was staring at me, but it wasn't me. The eyes were darker, the expression too menacing to be my own. I tried to close my eyes to block it out, but I couldn't. My reflection leaned closer to the glass, its lips curling into a slow, unnatural grin. It raised a hand and pressed it against the inside of the mirror. I could see the condensation forming on the glass, as if it were breathing inside there. The sound of its nails scraping against the surface was deafening, even though it didn't seem to make a sound. Then it spoke. The voice was faint, almost a whisper, but I could hear it clearly.
Let me out.
The words repeated over and over, growing louder each time until it felt like they were reverberating in my skull. My pulse pounded in my ears. I could feel the tears streaming down my face, my chest heaving as I tried to scream, tried to move, anything to break free from the paralysis. And then it stopped. The TV went silent, the distorted sounds replaced by the low hum of static. The paralysis lifted, and I bolted upright, gasping for air. The mirror was just a mirror again, my reflection wide-eyed and pale. That was months ago. I tell myself it was a dream, that my mind was playing tricks on me, but I don't believe it. Not really. Sleep doesn't come easy anymore. Every night I delay closing my eyes, dreading the moment I might wake up frozen again, trapped in that in-between state where things can crawl through the cracks. I avoid looking into mirrors for too long, just in case something looks back that shouldn't be there. And sometimes, when the house is silent and I'm alone, I swear I hear it. That whisper, faint, almost a breath.
Let me out.